No clue. Are you guys here for me?
Yeah, we want to do everything we can to help. That's why you have so many of us.
I feel my worst nightmare. And that, ladies and gentlemen, those are the moments when that's the moment that Christopher Scholtes is realizing the police are there, they're not leaving, and they're tailing him. Now, why are we talking about this today? Because this is going to be the subject today of discussion and breakdown in our Justice Breakdown series. And the reason why this has caught my attention is because it's actually quite incredible. Because Christopher Scholtes on Wednesday walked into a Pima County courtroom and he entered a guilty plea, agreeing to accept a minimum of 20 years with a maximum cap of 30 years in exchange for a guilty plea. But look, that's not the news, right? It's not the sentence, but it's the idea that 7 months ago, this man rejected a plea deal that would have given him as little as 10 years and capped him at 24 years. I want that to set in. March of 2025, this father, who you just saw in the opening scene there, was given an opportunity to only get 10 years in prison if the judge were to so give him. And when we talk about everything that's happened here, you're going to see that there's a very real possibility that judge might have considered giving him 10 years, because there's some things I want to talk about that the judge has done, which indicate that she wasn't against Christopher Scholtes. But he ends up rolling the dice, rejecting the plea bargain, goes on a vacation with his family for 9 days while being out on bond on first-degree unaliving charges. And then on the eve of trial, comes back and accepts a plea that puts him in prison for at least 20 years, potentially up to 30 years. How the heck did we get here, guys? How did this happen? That's what we're going to explore. That's what we're going to talk about. But first, let's take a look at this news clip of what happened on Wednesday.
This morning, and Christopher Scholtes accepted a plea deal. News for Tucson's chief investigative reporter Corus Nylander first broke that prosecutors offered him a deal and was inside the courtroom today. Corus, you join us live outside Pima County Superior Court with the latest on this.
Now, Monica, Christopher Scholtes stood before the judge here today and admitted guilt. He get to stay out of jail at least for the next 2 weeks.
Let's talk about that point right now. I just laid out a very interesting scenario, and if you caught it, right, this man's charged with first-degree unaliving. Now, we haven't got into the deep background on this case, but obviously if he could go on a Hawaiian vacation, it means he was out on bond. He gets arrested. He gets booked. His wife goes and pleads with the judge to get him bond. She didn't want him charged. He ends up getting a personal recognizance bond. At the time he was only charged with second-degree unaliving, but then he's re-indicted and his bond is simply increased to $25,000. Still a personal recognizance bond, I believe, but nonetheless, the prosecution in this case was arguing that he be held without bond. But the judge gives him a recognizance bond so he can go to his daughter's funeral. When the charges are upgraded, most defendants would have been held without bond. He ends up with a $25,000 bond. He's out on bond. He goes to the court and he asks if he could go on vacation with his family, and the judge grants it. She grants it. And then the kicker, he takes a plea bargain for a minimum 20 years, maximum 30-year sentence. I don't know of a state I've ever heard of where an individual is facing that much time and has changed his plea from not guilty to guilty, and he gets to stay out for a bonus 2 weeks before he starts serving his time before sentencing. That's insane. So the question I have is, why did he plead guilty? I think I have the answer, but we're going to talk about that. But let's continue listening here. But I want to point this out. Incredibly favorable judge, incredibly favorable conditions, and yet he's taking a 20-year sentence. He's taking a sentence that is double the minimum of what he was being offered 7 months ago, and 6 years longer on the maximum side than what he was being offered 7 months ago. Unbelievable stuff. I can't believe it. But that's what's going on here. Anyways, Let's continue listening.
Time behind bars he will actually be sentenced to. But what is clear tonight is he avoided the potential of spending the rest of his life behind bars. Cameras were not allowed inside of today's plea hearing. Scholtes was supposed to go on trial Monday next week. That's not going to happen now. That's been vacated after he accepted this sudden plea deal from prosecutors, which was actually signed yesterday. We were first to tell you about this second deal yesterday after obtaining an email from the county attorney's office. Scholtes was quick to deny a similar deal made to him back in March, but obviously has had second thoughts as his trial was approaching. The new deal has him pleading down to a lesser charge, cannot serve any more than 30 years behind bars for both of these charges, and presumably will not serve any less than 20 years behind bars per the agreement. He was free to leave by himself here at court today. I questioned him as he left the courthouse. Mr. Scholtes, anything you want to say for yourself? You pled guilty. Do you have any regrets about your daughter being in that hot car? What would you say to your daughter, Parker, right now if you could speak with her? She's 2 years old. And as you heard there, he stayed silent. The Pima County Attorney's Office is considering this plea agreement as justice. They released a statement today saying, in part, we are grateful for the hard work and dedication of our prosecutors.
All right, so that is the gist of what happened. He took a plea. He's facing a minimum. He's going to receive a minimum of 20 years. He has a maximum cap of 30 years. He was looking at life. But remember, the kicker here. He was offered 10 to 24, basically same scenario, but the judge could have sentenced him to as little as 10 and to as much as 24. Now, here's the other part of this plea deal that you must understand, which makes this all the more incredible. He's got to serve day for day. Arizona doesn't have parole. And the agreement is that he serves every single day of this sentence, whatever the judge decides to sentence him to, and no ability to appeal. I repeat, no ability to appeal. He is locked in. The question at hand is, what in the world happened here in that 7 months? How did the defense go from we're confident, we're ready to go to trial, we're ready to take this thing apart, they were planning a potential mental health defense. How does this happen, right? How does that happen? To they're willing to accept 20 years in prison. What in the world is going on in the world of Christopher Scholtes? If you're not familiar with the case, here's what happened. July 9th, 2024, we're set the scene. On July 9th, 2024, Parker Scholtes, a 2-year-old, beautiful 2-year-old girl, her grandmother described her as a bright light, always smiling, full of joy. Christopher Scholtes takes Parker and her 2 older sisters on some errands. He ends up dropping the 2 older sisters off for a birthday party. He goes and shoplifts beer from 2 different convenience stores with Parker in the car. He then arrives home at 12:53 p.m. and he does the one thing no parent should ever do. He decides to go inside the house and want the responsibility of being a dad. And that is reckless, and that is why he definitely deserved to be charged with at least manslaughter in this case. And boom, mom comes home and says, where's Parker? And the scene unfolds that you saw at the beginning of this video. Police are called, ambulance is called, but here's the kick. It's later uncovered that the mom had repeatedly told him not to practice that dated back for years, and that there was even in a child he had with a previous relationship, that there were complaints filed with Child Protective Services in this case. That's right. Complaints filed with Child Protective Services about this very thing. Does that make you think of a case? Well, it does me. The Christopher Gregory case. Child Protective Services is hearing about dangerous behavior and they're doing nothing. Anyways, we end up here at this point, and that's what ends up happening. Now, this gentleman who is living a very good life, his wife is a doctor, he's a stay-at-home dad. You look around that house in the body cam footage of his of the moments when they're running around the house and in the aftermath. The guy is a prima donna. He's got drum set. In fact, let's roll some footage. All right, so there you have it. Look at this, right? he's got a drum set, he's got video games. I mean, he's got every toy he could possibly want. He's got a wife who's taking him on vacations, and you look at the Facebook page, and there, this guy's got it all, right? On top of that, later on, if you watch the full video of the body cam of this, when they're getting ready to go to the hospital, this guy's got his daughter at the hospital now being tended to, and this fool wants to go get a shower. He's upset with the police because the police aren't allowing him to rinse off. So it's this guy who is unable to go to the hospital to care for his daughter, whom he has just caused the death of, or in this case, she's over there, and it's not completely, it's not confirmed yet of the death, but she's at the hospital being tended to, and all he wants to do is get a shower. All he wants to do, he's concerned with his own hygiene, and yet this is a man now that's going to go into prison for 20 years and has accepted to do this. This is a guy who has shown up at court hearings with Starbucks coffee. And this is a man who, as you're going to see here, this is the arrest footage. Check this out. Does this seem like a guy who's going to do well in prison? I don't think so. Watch this.
So based off of our investigation at this point, right, we have determined that there's probable cause to go ahead and charge you for what happened. Okay.
Let's come out here, Christopher.
No.
It's okay. It's okay.
No.
Okay. So
No.
listen.
No.
Listen. Okay. This doesn't change what's happening.
This.
This doesn't change what's going on. Okay. What happens at this point? It's simple. Okay. What happens at this point is you are going to be taken into custody, all right, and you will be booked. And then after you are booked, you have an initial appearance with the judge within the first 24 hours, okay? After the first 24 hours, right, the judge will determine bond and things like that as far as what happens next. At that point, the case goes to the courts. It'll be between you, it'll be between your attorneys, and it'll be between the county prosecutor, okay? So, again, I can't change the consequences of what happened. All right, but
So-
what I'm going to ask if
This gentleman, if you can imagine, I want you to put it in your brain, has just agreed to 20 to 30 years. I don't think he knows what he's getting in his head. I guess maybe he feels like, hey, he'd rather have a few years left after, than have to go for life. But I mean, I don't see this guy doing well in prison, and certainly not doing well in prison when he's accused of killing a child. That is going to be a disaster. The question is, what happened? How did we end up here? And I have the answer, guys. Why did he take the plea? And I'll tell you why. Because here's what happened. And here's what went down. Mr. Scholtes rejected the 10 to 24 years. He did that with a lot of confidence. He did that with believing that he was going to get off. And he did that, of course, before a lot of this information that he was watching porn and all these things were coming out into the press. But he ends up taking rejecting that plea. But what the prosecution did, and what I believe is the real kicker here, is once he did that, the prosecution, as is later learned, and when at a later pretrial hearing last month, his defense attorney is talking to the judge about the plea and is telling the judge, listen, Miss Scholtes is very upset. Miss Scholtes doesn't want her husband charged. Miss Scholtes is angry that the prosecutors are charging her husband in this. And additionally, they're upset because they have subpoenaed not just the wife, but the two little girls. And what are they subpoenaing them for? Because as it has come out and was released about a month ago, all these child protective services reports from years ago that stem from a child in his first marriage comes out that he was leaving the children in cars for years. And on top of that, one of his little daughters with his current wife, Erica, told the police that he did this all the time and that mommy used to complain at him about it. And they were going to bring those girls into court and make them testify. It's my belief that it was that realization that he was not going to avoid trial, and he went into a panic. And he told his defense attorney, listen, I can't have my children brought in like this. I can't put them through the trauma of a trial. And as a result, they ended up working out this deal. And it's a terrible deal, in my opinion. I mean, in comparison to what he had on the table, it makes no sense. It's just really a shocking situation, because to me, why the heck would you turn down 10 years if you weren't actually planning to take this thing to trial? And I'm going to show you a clip here of the defense attorney talking. I'm going to show you a clip here of the defense attorney talking to the court and discussing this, which I believe explains exactly why and exactly the psychology going on behind the scenes. And I would bet that his wife doesn't want him to take this plea. I would bet you his family doesn't want him to take this plea. I would bet you that he's taking this on his own because he's decided, I don't want to put my daughters through this. I'm not saying he gets credit for that, or that it in any way negates what he did to the younger one. But I'm just saying that I believe that's what is at play here. Let's go, and we're going to play this footage for you.
Hospital instead of prison. He says the child's mother does not want to see Scholtes stand trial.
Erica Scholtes is not pushing for the state to prosecute her husband. This family is dealing with the emotional toll and is now going to have to gear up for a trial in this case. And I don't know why in this case, the state has had to criminally subpoena Erica and the two children in this case, because I don't think that she is being very cooperative with the prosecution.
Scholtes' defense attorney still wants to try to arrange a plea bargain with the help of new evidence he's developed.
So there you have it, everyone. There you have it. I think that is exactly what was speaking here. The defense attorney was telling Scholtes he could get him a better deal. He was telling him, push it. Let's 10 to 24. I think I can get you better than second. I think we can get this to manslaughter. He was pushing the idea. And earlier in this clip, they talk about the fact that he was exploring mental defenses, and he was exploring that there were cognitive issues and memory issues, and he was exploring all of that. And it was his hope that those were going to be the defenses he was going to raise at trial. But I think that as this trial came in, Scholtes basically said, listen, I can't do this to my daughters. I can't put them on the stand to make them testify against me. There's no way I'm going to do it. Go find out if they will do the 10 to 24. And they came back and they said, absolutely not. In this case, they were in a position of power, and the state said, well, do 20 to 30. And I think he said, okay, I'll take it. Now, here's what I think, though. This is a guy sitting at home playing video games right now, strumming his drums or hitting his drums and strumming his guitar. And he has spent a couple of days in the county jail. He has no idea what this is really going to be like. So I am wondering, because he is out right now as we speak. He will be out of jail until the 5th. I believe, I have a lingering suspicion, I don't know if it'll happen, but it's my belief that before he has to turn himself in on the 5th, he's going to retract his guilty plea, and he's going to try to get out of this deal. I think it's a moment where it's one of these deals. Think of every buying purchase you've ever done. It sounds great. It looks great. You're buying a car. Maybe you're buying a car that you can't afford, and you buy it. And then you think to yourself the next day, what did I just do? Holy cow. Boy, that payment's going to be really large. And boy, that's going to be really uncomfortable to have to go through it month after month, day after day of having to make that payment. And for him, it's the same deal. He's having to make that payment, the payment being years in time of his life that he's going to have to spend in a penitentiary. And I think his wife doesn't want him to do it. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I highly doubt, judging from how she was and has been and how she spoke out at his bond hearing, she doesn't feel he should be prosecuted at all. But I think in his mind, and the fact that he showed up at the plea hearing and signed that plea himself, wouldn't say anything to the press. I think at this point, he's done this. He's made this snap decision. He's a guy that doesn't have very good judgment. And in my opinion, I mean, listen, he's going to get out when he's either 59 or 69. I think probably, given the facts of this case, the judge is going to give him 30 years. Or I really think she'll split the baby and put him at 25. But 25 years is essentially a life sentence for all practical purposes. His life is over. Do you think his wife will stick by him? I highly doubt it. She's probably telling him she will now, but I mean, realistically speaking, I don't think so. This is a guy who's not going to fare well in prison. This is a guy who's going to have a target on his back. This is a guy who's going to be a victim. They know he's got a rich wife. They know he killed his daughter. This is going to be the most disastrous prison sentence that you could possibly have. So the question would be, why wouldn't you just fight? Why wouldn't you just fight it out? And I think the answer to that is he's trying to do what he thinks is the noble thing. But, that's where it stands. So I don't want this to be, confused here that I'm defending him. I agree he should be punished. Now, my question with it is, though, in this case, is yes, he was irresponsible. Do I think he should be punished with a life sentence? No. Do I think he was a responsible guy in what he did? No. Does he have to live with that? Yes. When this case first came out, I believed, especially with the fact that he had the cooperation of his wife, that there was going to be some sort of manslaughter plea worked out that was going to net him a few years in prison. It was going to require him to go to prison. And then there was going to be a long-term supervision involved that was going to say, okay, we split the baby here and we give him a 15-year sentence and suspend 12 and he serves 3, and then there's supervision or if there's some sort of creativity. Because I felt like the prosecution has got to acknowledge the fact that the mother and wife, but the mother of the child is saying, I don't want him prosecuted. Didn't happen here. Prosecutor is on their own island on this one. And I think it's actually kind of somewhat of a poor statement about the prosecutors here who would actually say they're looking at this. You have a mom who is devastated. You have the 2 sisters that are devastated. They're losing a dad. They lost a sister. And the fact that they would say, man, we're going to go ahead and subpoena them to court and bring them to court and re-traumatize them just to go after the dad without saying, hey, let's work out a deal that can protect the children that are still existing, can also punish him and make a statement to the community, but at the same point, not re-victimize and cause these children to not just lose a sister, but now lose their dad too. And that's the tightrope walk that a case like this requires. And that's where you can see these prosecutors are out to win. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think this plea is justice? 20 to 30 years. Do you think he should have went to trial? Did he make a mistake not going to trial? Would you have gone to trial with this set of circumstances? Because there's another thing I want to leave you with. The judge, and I think I said this earlier, excluded from the trial any reference to him having watched pornography. So he was going to get to go to trial without that fact going before the jury. Now, they were going to hear about the drinking, they were going to hear about the shoplifting, but they were not going to hear about the pornography. That was ruled to be so prejudicial that the jury could not hear that. In other words, it would color the jury's ability to look at this case fairly. They said, we're not going to deal with that. So, what do you think? Should he have rolled the dice? Did he make the right decision? You let me know. Anyways, guys, this is Justice as a Process. We're going to be doing this now. This is something that I did at the beginning of the channel, resurrecting it. We're going to be going in, looking at cases, looking at things that are happening, reacting to clips and things around the justice system. And I'm going to be talking to you about it and bringing you my perspective and my thoughts and analyzing the case, analyzing what's happening and giving you the lowdown from the justice as a process perspective. Was justice served here? Did the process work? I don't think it did. I don't like it. I think he should have gone to trial. I think we should have seen that play out. But at the same time, as a father, I do understand why he would not want his kids exposed to that. What a tragic case, though, all around. Anyways, I appreciate all of you watching, guys. And remember, justice always works better when we watch. So keep on watching.